During the exam, he discovered something strange. The questions were all from practice tests he had done before. For a moment, Zhao Lin found it hard to believe. Could it be a hallucination from studying too late? However, he glanced around and realized he was indeed in the school's exam hall. He wanted to secretly tell the answers to his best friend behind him, but suddenly there was a loud noise. A chalkboard eraser was thrown against the wall by the teacher. It turned out their sneaky behavior was caught by the proctor. Fortunately, the exam had just started, so the teacher didn't pursue it further. To help her best friend pass, Xiaoling quickly finished all the exam questions. Then, taking advantage of the teacher yawning, she quickly switched her pencil to pen mode and wrote all the answers on an eraser to give her friend a hint. After that, she took off her shoe, stuffed the eraser inside, and handed the shoe to her friend behind her. Suddenly, the teacher seemed to notice something and got up from the podium. At that moment, both of them even forgot to breathe. It wasn't until the teacher walked past them that they finally exhaled. Then, her friend kicked her own shoe towards Xiaoling. Unexpectedly, due to too much force, the shoe ended up in the aisle. Their hearts jumped to their throats. Just as the teacher was about to look over, Xiaoling quickly picked up the test paper, put on the shoe in the aisle, and approached the teacher, asking if she needed to write her name. After getting a positive response, she wrote her name, conveniently blocking the teacher's view. This gave her friend the chance to quickly grab the eraser. Sure enough, her friend also got excellent grades. To celebrate the good news, she happily invited Xiaoling to her wealthy boyfriend Zhaoba's pool party. Little did she know, this event would change her life forever. That night, Zhaoba heard about the exam incident and wanted Xiaoling to help him cheat too. Her father had promised her, as long as she didn't fail any subjects, he would buy her a new car. Of course, he wouldn't let Zhaolin help for free. He promised 3,000 yuan per exam. There were 13 exams in a semester, and they had 5 people. This was no small amount. Zhao Lin was tempted because his family wasn't wealthy. His father had spent almost all his savings to send him to this prestigious high school. Thanks to his excellent academic performance, the school waived his tuition fees. However, life was still a bit tight. Just as she was hesitating, the rich kid emphasized to her, "Just consider it as earning back your sponsorship fee." This immediately struck Xiaoling like a bolt of lightning. It turns out that all the students here pay a sponsorship fee, and the worse the grades, the more they pay. Xiao Ba, like her best friend, paid 400,000. In addition, Xiao Ba also donated 20 Apple computers. The reason Xiaoling didn't have to pay the sponsorship fee might be because his scholarship just covered it. After returning home, the skeptical Xiaoling immediately opened her father's drawer and indeed saw the receipt for the 200,000 sponsorship fee. Xiaoling knew that the family's financial situation was not good. After her parents divorced, her father bore a huge financial burden alone. Out of anger at the school's shady dealings and her father's hard work, Xiaoling finally agreed to Xiao Ba's cheating request. But helping so many people cheat is not simple. After thinking it over, he still couldn't find a good solution. That day, while he was playing the piano in frustration, watching his fingers move with the music, he suddenly found inspiration for cheating. In a formal exam setting, traditional cheating methods are hard to pull off. But using 4 piano fingerings to represent the options A, B, C, and D, as long as you remember the finger movements, you can match them to the answers. For this, he specifically started a training class to teach everyone to recognize the fingerings. Soon, it was time for another exam. Zhao Lin placed his right hand on the table, played the fingerings, and everyone watched his fingers and easily wrote down the answers. As expected, the underachievers' scores all reached the passing line. Moreover, the rich kid was rewarded with a new car by his father for his excellent grades. Zhao Lin, on the other hand, easily earned hundreds of thousands, but he didn't spend a penny recklessly, instead claiming he earned some income by tutoring classmates. So, he bought his father a brand-name shirt. After tasting success, he printed flyers under the guise of piano lessons to attract more people who needed to cheat. Unexpectedly, the reputation was very good, and the business was booming, earning him a fortune. Amidst the busyness, he also took time to participate in a genius youth competition with a fellow top student, and together they won first place. Not only did they form a deep friendship, but they also brought honor to the school. The excited principal immediately announced good news to them. Next year, the Singapore embassy will provide a batch of full scholarships. With this scholarship, they could study up to a PhD. But unfortunately, the school only secured 1 spot. So, the two who were just teammates began a silent competition. In no time, the final exams were approaching. Before the exam started, a struggling student also signed up for piano lessons. But he found Xiao Ling's hand gestures too complicated to remember. So, he approached Ban Ke, offering a course for 3,000 Thai baht to help him cheat. Although Ban Ke's family situation was worse than Xiao Ling's, he refused without a second thought. Unexpectedly, the struggling student accidentally mentioned the words, "piano teacher." Even though he immediately denied it, it piqued Ban Ke's curiosity. But with the exams about to start, he didn't have time to dig deeper. Afterward, he was the first to arrive at the exam hall, put on his headphones, and calmed his mind with classical music. Soon, the students took their seats. To prevent cheating, 2 sets of exam papers were distributed this time. Xiao Ling received Set A, while some seniors got Set A and others got Set B. With no other choice, Xiao Ling had to push through. She completed Set A and then passed the answers to classmates who also had Set A. After the first batch of students finished, they submitted their papers together, blocking the teacher's view. Xiao Ling took the opportunity to swap papers with the struggling student who had Set B. At this point, only 20 minutes remained. Xiao Ling was sweating profusely as she frantically wrote on the paper. Unexpectedly, her pen ran into trouble. Fortunately, she quickly fixed it and continued answering. In the last 5 minutes, after finishing the paper, Xiao Ling tapped her fingers rapidly on the desk, like sending a telegraph, to transmit the answers. Just when she thought everything was flawless, Ban Ke noticed Xiao Ling's unusual desk movements and mistakenly thought he was copying her answers. Angrily, he reported this to the teacher, but the teacher didn't believe him at all, so Ban Ke took it to the principal. The clever principal quickly noticed something amiss on Xiao Ling's draft paper. On the draft paper of Xiao Ling, who was taking Set A, there were questions from both Set A and Set B. Thus, Xiao Ling's cheating was exposed. Subsequently, the principal called in Xiao Ling's parents and explained the situation very seriously. However, considering it was an isolated incident and not a group cheating, they only revoked Xiao Ling's scholarship. Upon hearing all this, Ban Ke rushed in to explain for Xiao Ling. She stated that the struggling student initially intended to pay 3,000 Thai baht to have her help cheat, but after being refused, he turned to Xiao Ling. Xiao Ling did it just for the money. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this explanation, the principal became even angrier. He stated that the school is a place for learning, not for making money. This made Xiao Ling, who was not convinced, sneer and question the principal about the sponsorship fees. Unexpectedly, this angered the principal. In a fit of anger, he directly revoked Xiao Ling's eligibility to run for the full scholarship. This scholarship was crucial for the combined bachelor's and master's program, and there was only one spot available. Now, it naturally fell into the hands of the class. An angry Xiao Ling shouted that it was unfair. Others copied my answers, and my grades were all earned by myself. But the principal firmly stated that if you can accept it, then accept it. If not, then drop out. With no way out, Xiao Ling had to give in. After returning home, her father was also very upset about this. He grabbed the expensive shirt Xiao Ling had given him and told her to return all the illicit money. Then, he said they would have to sell the car to cover Xiao Ling's tuition fees. However, washing one's hands of it is not that easy. Soon, her best friend came to her again. It turned out that ever since Xiao Ling helped, her best friend and Xiao Ba's grades had skyrocketed. Xiao Ba's parents thought their son's grades improved dramatically because of the best friend's influence. So, they specially invited the best friend to a banquet and discussed future plans with her, hoping she would accompany their son to study at a top university in the United States. But it is not as simple as writing a letter. There are strict score requirements. That means passing the STSE exam. So, the best friend could only act cute and plead with Xiao Ling for help. Xiao Ling initially wanted to refuse, but her best friend claimed that the reward this time was 600,000. The reward made Xiao Ling waver again because she also wanted to study abroad. If she earned this money, she would have the funds to study abroad. But the international STSE exam is extremely strict, and cheating is as difficult as climbing to the sky. Just as Xiao Ling was stepping out of the elevator, she turned her head and saw an American chatting with his daughter via video call. At this time, it was evening in Thailand and daytime in the United States. With a glance at the international clock in the hotel, she suddenly thought of a brilliant cheating idea. Although the STSE exam time is globally unified, due to time differences, the exam times in each country still vary. So, she planned to fly to Sydney first, then use the 4-hour time difference between Sydney and Thailand to complete the exam there, prepare the answers, and send them over, allowing her to pass smoothly. Now that there was room to maneuver, Xiao Ling decided to go big. She asked her best friend and Xiao Ba to bring in more clients, and they would split the earnings equally. However, Xiao Ling is not a robot. After finishing the questions, she only had time to remember half of the answers, so she needed a helper. So, she thought of Bank. After finding him, she immediately explained her intentions. But Bank, being upright, didn't agree. Xiao Ling didn't push further and just turned around and left. She believed that Bank, being in the same situation, would eventually agree because she knew his family situation was even worse than her own. Her family runs a laundry, but they are so poor that they don't even have a working washing machine. All the clothes are washed by her mother by hand. To support her son's education, she has endured a lot. But the day before the Singapore scholarship exam, while Bank was delivering clothes to a customer, he accidentally scratched a passerby's car and was beaten up without a word, passing out on the spot. When she woke up the next day, she found herself lying in a garbage dump. As a result, she missed the scholarship exam, losing the chance for a continuous study program from bachelor's to doctorate. To give his mother a better life, he had to raise money for his education himself. As expected, Bank eventually agreed. just as Xiao Ling had predicted. Thus, the two academic prodigies were responsible for the answers, while the rich second-generation couple was in charge of bringing in clients. Unexpectedly, they managed to bring in 30 people at once. This time, the income could reach 705. After deducting necessary costs, Bank could get 1 million, while Xiao Ling would get double. Hearing this number, Bank was stunned. She never imagined that an exam could bring in so much money. After getting this money, Xiao Ling had the assurance to study abroad. To ensure everything went smoothly, the two began planning the details. The STSC exam had 4 sections, with a 10-minute break between each section. Their plan was to hide a phone in the toilet tank and use the restroom breaks to send the answers to their friend in Thailand. After receiving the answers, the friend would print them on pencils, using the width of the barcode to represent the ABCD answers, and the numbers after the barcode to represent the fill-in-the-blank answers. At that time, everyone could just bring the pencils into the exam room. For this, Xiao Ba even rented a printing factory and recruited 30 models. To ensure that on the exam day, the candidates can be promptly sent to the exam venue. Immediately after, her best friend started practicing typing speed. Meanwhile, Bank and Xiao Ling began registering for the STSE exam in Sydney. However, as minors, going abroad always requires a guardian's signature. So, Xiao Ling lied, saying she and Bank were going to Sydney to participate in a TV show competition, easily tricking her dad into signing. Then, the two began reviewing their lessons and simulating exams. They even rehearsed their alibi. But during a chat, Bank unexpectedly learned that it was Zhaoba who sent people to beat him up. Instantly, he went mad and lunged at Zhaoba. Zhaoba hurriedly explained that it was done to stand up for Xiao Ling, not expecting those people to be so ruthless. Seeing her explain so casually, Bank couldn't suppress his anger, turned around, and left. Xiao Ling didn't expect this to be because of her, so she immediately chased after him to find Bank and told her best friend that if Bank quits, then she will too. Saying this, she was about to return all the money and no longer participate in this cheating. However, unexpectedly, Bank, who had just left, suddenly came back, pulling Xiao Ling to go take the exam. It turned out that she had just seen a laundry detergent ad on the roadside, and in an instant, thought of her hard-working mother. She didn't want to be beaten for nothing, at least by joining in, there was money involved. Later, on the way to the airport, neither of them spoke a word, their eyes filled with confusion and worry about the future. The next morning, the two finally arrived in Sydney. It was their first time abroad, and excitedly, they went to the opera house to check in. Looking at the vibrant scene before them, they resolved to conquer this place and master the rules of the world, no longer being restrained. At this moment, Xiao Ling took out her phone and took a selfie with Bank. At this moment, this pair of frenemies finally had some warm memories. As the exam approached, the atmosphere became increasingly tense. The TV kept broadcasting news about sporadic exam leaks from previous years. Therefore, this year's STSE exam supervision was further intensified. This scared Xiao Ling and Bank so much that their throats went dry. Then, on the subway to the exam venue, the two students could only listen to Mozart to ease their anxiety. Upon arriving at the exam venue, the two quickly followed their plan, first going to the restroom to hide their phones in the toilet tank and then entering the exam hall. Quickly finished the assigned tasks, trying hard to imprint them in his mind. Meanwhile, the insider MI at the Thai printing factory and Xiao Ba were also ready. The 30 chess players they summoned were on standby, ready to send the candidates to the exam hall as soon as they got the answers. As soon as the first exam ended, Zhao Lin and Bank rushed into the restroom to frantically input the answers they had memorized. Unexpectedly, Bank's resentment suddenly resurfaced. If it weren't for the fact that Xiao Ba had already secured a scholarship, he wouldn't be risking his life for them here. So, on a whim, he raised the price, threatening Xiao Ba to transfer another million, or he wouldn't send the answers. Upon hearing this, Xiao Ba was extremely angry and cursed Bank as a beast. With time running out, it was MI who finally transferred her savings, and only then was Bank willing to send the answers over. Then, after the second exam ended, Zhao Lin and Bank rushed into the restroom again. Unexpectedly, Zhao Lin encountered a line and couldn't get in for a long time. On the other hand, Bank's trouble was even bigger. While he was transmitting the answers in the restroom, the door was rudely knocked. It turned out he had been reported for occupying the restroom for too long. The examiner ordered him to open the door immediately, and Bank was almost scared to death. He hurriedly finished sending the answers and deleted all the chat records. However, in his haste, he made a mistake. The tank lid suddenly fell and shattered, leaving him with nowhere to hide his phone. Even throwing it into the toilet wouldn't flush it away. The examiner, noticing the commotion, broke in and caught Bank red-handed. Meanwhile, before Zhao Lin could start sending the answers, a female examiner knocked on the door, telling her to return to the exam hall immediately. Fortunately, the quick-witted Zhao Lin hid her phone in her boot, trying to sneak past. However, as she stepped out, she saw Bank being caught, which made her even more nervous. Moreover, there was a body search at the classroom entrance. At this moment, she noticed a water dispenser nearby and, while pretending to get water, quickly hid her phone inside it, then calmly entered the exam hall. Since Bank was caught, his workload suddenly increased. Answering questions was easy for him, but the hard part was memorizing the answers. He not only had to remember the answers he hadn't sent out but also Bank's portion. Rote memorization was definitely not an option. Just when Zhao Lin was at his wit's end, he suddenly remembered the piano memorization method and turned the answers into sheet music to memorize them. But he couldn't wait for the exam to end. She directly jabbed a pen into her throat, causing her to vomit instantly. Then, she pretended to feel unwell and immediately gave up on the exam. Meanwhile, her best friend and Xiao Ba also encountered Xiao Ling's father causing trouble. She told the two that Xiao Ling said she and Bank were going to participate in a competition, but the entry pass was left at home. At this moment, they couldn't reach Xiao Ling at all. Suddenly, the best friend confidently stated that Xiao Ling and Bank went out on a date and lied because they were afraid you wouldn't agree. Only then did the father breathe a sigh of relief and leave. On the other side, after leaving the exam room, Xiao Ling quickly took out her phone, walking briskly while editing the answers. Noticing something was wrong, the proctor immediately chased after her. To avoid being caught, Xiao Ling quickly ran into the subway station. But at that moment, she couldn't remember the answers to the last 6 questions. Then, she missed the subway and accidentally walked into a dead end. Seeing the proctor about to catch up, he had no choice but to give up running and instead bought some cookies and milk. As the snacks fell from the vending machine, he finally remembered the answers to the last 6 questions. Afterward, he quickly sent all the answers successfully to Thailand. On the other side, Xiao Ba, who couldn't wait for the answers, thought it was because the phone had no signal. The waiting students thought they had been tricked and started shouting for a refund. Just in the nick of time, the answers finally came through. The best friend and others quickly finished making all the pencils. Then, the driver immediately set off, taking the students swiftly to the exam venue. Meanwhile, Xiao Lin hurriedly stuffed the cookies into his mouth and drank a lot of milk. Then, he leaned against the wall to walk out and suddenly vomited everything out. He deliberately intensified the impression of being sick in the proctor's eyes. Later, on the way back to the exam room with the proctor, Xiao Lin casually slipped his phone into a passerby's bag. Finally, he calmly arrived at the exam room for inspection. According to the agreement during rehearsal, whoever got caught would take the blame. Bank said he was using his phone to look up words, admitting both guilt and punishment. Xiao Lin just went through a simple questioning process. But to ensure nothing went wrong, he had to pretend not to know Bank. So, he planned to delete the photos of himself and Bank from his phone. However, before deleting the photos, he hesitated. He couldn't bear to let Bank take all the blame alone. In a moment of impulse, he knocked on the interrogation room door. But in the end, he still said nothing. Due to lack of evidence, the proctor was helpless against Xiao Ling and could only nullify her exam results. After that, Xiao Ling returned alone to Bangkok Airport, where her best friend and Zhaoba happily picked her up, showing no sadness about being caught cheating in class. As for Xiao Ling, who left the exam halfway, they thought she could just retake it. At this moment, Xiao Ling finally saw through the truth about the so-called June 1st. Exhausted in body and mind, she decided not to contact her best friend anymore. Later, her father came to pick Xiao Ling up. He thought his daughter was dating someone from the class and didn't blame her at all, even suggesting she bring him home for dinner sometime. This sudden and genuine fatherly love made Zhao Lin unable to suppress her guilt any longer, and she broke down crying in her father's arms. At that moment, he made up his mind to say goodbye to the past and start anew. While he was engulfed in sadness, on the other side, all the students involved in cheating received high scores. To celebrate, Zhaoba even held a grand party at the club. Meanwhile, Bank, who got caught, was having a tough time. After returning to his country, he became a dark chapter in the school's history. Although he used the money he earned to upgrade his family's laundry shop and bought a new scooter. Unfortunately, he was expelled from school because of the cheating incident. Even the poster symbolizing honor was thrown into the storage room. He completely abandoned his former self. In the blink of an eye, senior year was over. Zhao Lin decided to stay in Bangkok to study education. The interview teacher was very surprised, thinking that with his grades and honors, he could easily get into an international prestigious school. Only Xiao Ling knew very well why she stayed here. She wanted to become a teacher to atone for her mistakes and because she couldn't bear to leave her father. After the interview, Xiao Ling suddenly received a text from Bank, inviting her to meet at his house. After several days, she set foot there again, only to find the laundry shop completely renewed. However, when Xiao Ling pushed open the bedroom door, she saw that Bank's room was still old and shabby. Now, she had completely changed, only wanting to make money. This time, Bank called Xiao Ling over to propose collaborating and cheating to continue making money. Xiao Ling didn't expect him to sink deeper and wanted to help him, saying that if he needed money, she could give him her share. However, Bank was even more greedy than before. He actually wanted to rely on cheating for a living. After Xiao Ling refused, he even tried to threaten her with their cheating incident in Sydney. It was said that if this matter were exposed, not only Xiao Ling but everyone involved at the time would be implicated. Looking at the darkened class, Xiao Ling felt a mix of emotions. In the end, she said nothing and instead pushed the door open and left. She didn't want to see the class fall further because she knew that if they didn't turn back in time, both the class and herself would fall into an abyss. Eventually, accompanied by her father, she chose to turn herself in to the Education Bureau. After confessing, all the students' scores were voided, and Xiaoling finally achieved her own redemption. Bad Genius is a drama film directed by Natawut Poompiria, starring Chutaman Chuangcharan and Channon Santinatornkal, released in 2017. In this era of scores, the film uses a grand cross-border cheating scheme to tear off the hypocritical mask of the education system. On the surface, the film tells the story of a genius girl, Xiaoling, who uses time zone loopholes to help rich kids cheat, but in reality, it's a profound examination of class fairness and human choice. Xiaoling and Bank's initial choices stemmed from a compromise with reality. Students are striving hard. Yet, the shortcuts paved with money by the second-generation rich, when cheating escalates from individual acts to a cross-border industry chain, the initial cleverness has long turned into an irreversible gamble. Bank's descent into darkness is particularly heartbreaking. When he discovered that the moral bottom line could be easily breached by poverty, the once upright young man ultimately became the businessman he despised the most. The film uses a cruel ending to tell us that fighting injustice with the wrong methods only makes you an accomplice to the system. In the film, the school's honor wall, parents' expectations, and the halo of international prestigious schools together weave an impenetrable net. When education becomes a tool for class contracts, exams turn into chips in the rich's game. It's never the scores that lose at the starting line, but the freedom of choice. Xiaoling's final confession is not a flaw but a hope the director leaves for the audience. The system can distort rules, but individuals still have the power to break the cycle. In reality, there may not be a strictly monitored STSE exam, but everyone faces similar moral dilemmas. Do you bow to the rules or uphold the order in your heart? The value of this film lies in its exposure of the lies of success. The exam of life is never evenly divided, and true genius. After trying out the light rules, she still lives with clarity. The most shocking scene in the film is when Xiaoling breaks down and cries in front of her father. She finally understands that the perfect scheme she crafted with her high intelligence didn't bring her freedom, but rather a shackle on her conscience. The director uses this plot to tell the audience that true genius isn't about cheating, but having the courage to correct mistakes. Bank and Xiaoling head towards completely different endings, which precisely proves this point. When a person uses their intelligence to fight the system and evade responsibility, they ultimately become a victim of the system. But those who dare to face their mistakes, even if they temporarily hit rock bottom, will eventually find their own path to redemption. Alright, that's all for today's movie sharing. Feel free to like, comment, and share. Looking forward to our next encounter.
Yeah.